Whoo! It's cold down here. I don't know where y'all live, but down here in Augusta, 50 degrees is cold. Uncle Lou had to get his robe on this morning. But anyway, good morning, Uncle Lou here. My thoughts on week 6 here. One of the wildest weeks in college football that I can remember, probably ever. Just in terms of wins and losses. Most of you probably know by now, but half the teams in the top 10 lost this weekend, starting with Oregon on Thursday night. Some of these games were a surprise, some not so much a surprise. Starting with Oregon, they do this every year. I made a video last week where I talked about that, but this is 2 years in a row they've lost to an unranked Arizona team. To me, Oregon is really the same team that they've been the last 2 or 3 years. They're going to beat up almost everybody they play, but they're poor on the offensive and defensive lines, and it always catches up with them. If Arizona wouldn't have beat them, they would have lost to Stanford, or it was just inevitable. Some of the bigger ones from Saturday, of course, congratulations to the state of Mississippi. Wow. The greatest football day in the history of Mississippi yesterday, for sure, with Mississippi State and Ole Miss both having huge wins, both at home. Of course, Mississippi State knocking off Texas A&M. That game wasn't even close. Mississippi State dominated that game from beginning to end. Wasn't even as close as the score indicated. Clearly, Mississippi State the better team there. Alabama and Ole Miss, probably one of the best games of the day. Probably the best game of the day. Alabama throws an interception at the end. Seals the deal for Ole Miss. Wins by a touchdown. Just unbelievable day for the state of Mississippi. Just amazing. Oklahoma goes down to TCU. To me, this was probably the most unexpected loss of the day. Oklahoma's looked pretty dominant in most games that they've played this year. They have been giving up a lot of points, particularly in that West Virginia game. But I didn't see them losing this one. I figured they would lose to... I figured what was going to happen in the Big 12 is that Baylor would be the team that would lose a game they weren't supposed to lose, and then Baylor would beat Oklahoma. And that's how I figured everybody would end up with a loss over there. But Baylor beat Texas yesterday, so now, they're still undefeated and looking pretty good. And, of course, TCU's now undefeated as well. UCLA lost late last night to Utah. 30-28, I believe it was. It was a pretty close game. That wasn't much of a surprise either. They've looked underwhelming this year, to say the least. Going all the way back to the first week of the season against Virginia, when what they score only one offensive touchdown or something like that. Only won that game because they had 3 defensive touchdowns. Brett Hundley's not the same player for whatever reason that he was last year. He started out the season a Heisman favorite. I don't even think he's in the conversation anymore. Sort of just falling off. So that was a little bit less of a surprise than Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma was definitely the biggest surprise loss yesterday. But a lot of shakeups yesterday in the top 10. Some of the other SEC games, of course, the Tennessee-Florida game. Florida comes back in the fourth quarter, down 10-0 to win, or down 9-0 to win the game, 10-9. And my only thoughts on this game, and I've made a few comments about it on some of the Tennessee and Florida folks' videos, but Tennessee, and this is something else I talked about last week when I talked about this game. At some point, the results have to start changing up there in Tennessee. And I'm not going to lie, I do feel bad for people like BVD and Carter, the alphabet guy, and the other Tennessee people. That was heartbreaking yesterday. I watched about 90% of that game. I was flipping over to the Mississippi State A&M game on occasion, but I primarily watched that Florida-Tennessee game. And Tennessee just dominated that game for 3 quarters. But Florida pulls it off in the end. And the knock I have, and I'm still seeing comments from Tennessee fans today, both on Facebook pages and in YouTube comments, that it's because we're playing freshmen, and you know, freshmen don't know how to win, and they just need the experience. Well, Florida, which is a complete wreck of a team, I mean, they looked god awful, especially on offense yesterday. Florida puts in a true freshman quarterback in the fourth quarter on the road at Neyland Stadium, down 9-0, and he brings them right down the field, scores, gets the ball back, brings them down the field again, kicks the game-winning field goal. Now, he's a true freshman. How come he knows how to win? But Tennessee's freshmen don't know how to win. So this excuse is getting a little old. I've been saying this all year, but every single team plays freshmen. So whether you're playing 2 or 22, quit hiding behind that. And another question, where's your freshmen from last year? They would be sophomores this year. Where are they? I mean, you know, the whole brick-by-brick thing, and Butch Jones comes out again yesterday after the game, and you watch his press conference, and it's like they won, just like after the Georgia game. A close loss is not a win. Though, you know, you're Tennessee. So, I mean, I don't know what to think about you guys. I mean, at the beginning of the year, I thought you guys were going to be terrible. I said you would win 4 games, and then, you know, Uncle Lou bought into the hype with all the Tennessee fans telling me how amazing y'all were going to be. So I said, okay, well, maybe 6 games in a bowl now. But yeah, I guess I'll split the difference now and say 5. I mean, you should beat Vandy. But, I mean, I'm just tired of hearing the excuse. And I'm particularly pissed off because after the Georgia game, you had Tennessee fans acting like they won that game and that it was stolen from them and all this kind of stuff. I mean, look, the bottom line is, as of right now, you guys are no different than you were last year. Same record, same losses, you know, so just... And the other thing I'm surprised about this week is, where's all the Alabama fans with the Fire Lane Kiffin talk? Because I know it's coming. So I don't know if you're just not saying it just to try to prove a point to Uncle Lou or what. But look, Lane Kiffin is a program killer, okay? In the last 5 years, he has destroyed Tennessee, Southern Cal, and now Alabama. 3 of the most historically great football programs in America. Lane Kiffin is the Ebola of college football, okay? And there's no known cure. So, you know, he cost y'all that game yesterday, period. So, let's get it going. Hashtag Fire Lane Kiffin. It's his fault. It can't be Nick Saban's fault. It can't be Alabama's fault. It can't be Blake Sims' fault. It can't be Amari Cooper's fault. It can't be the running back's fault. It definitely can't be the defense's fault. So that only leaves Lane Kiffin. So let's run this bum out of town. No need to even wait till the end of the year. Just go ahead and get rid of him now. Let Saban run the defense and the offense, and you know, then everything will be fine in T-Town. Shouldn't be any problems. So, yep. Now, one thing I will say about all these losses yesterday, and this is another thing I've been saying for a while, but one loss does not matter at all, especially in the SEC. So, you know, Alabama, A&M, all these people that are taking losses, doesn't matter. Now, if you're UCLA or Oklahoma, then you need to be particularly concerned. But the winner of the SEC is making the playoff, period. The only question is going to be, will another team get a shot? That's the only question. I still think Alabama loses 3 games this year. I still think the West is better than the East, but I want to leave you with this question here. If at the end of the year, the 2 best teams in the West are Ole Miss and Mississippi State, is the West really that much better than the East? Come on, West. Do better. You don't see the East letting Kentucky and Vanderbilt win the division. So, hashtag do better.